Listen to me carefully for a moment. When you watch these kinds of videos, I don't want you sitting there feeling happy for the people on screen, as if you're watching a movie about someone else's life. I don't want you thinking, that looks cool, then returning to your same comfortable routine. I want you to watch and immediately start asking yourself, how do I get to that level? How do I build a life like that for myself? How do I reach that kind of strength, influence, and capability? Because that is the real point. Not entertainment, but exposure to a version of reality you haven't unlocked yet. Look around you right now. Look at the room you're in, the environment you've built for yourself, the person you're lying next to, the clothes you wear, the car you drive, the accounts you check every morning. Ask yourself honestly, is this the life I want? Am I satisfied with this version of me? Or do I want more? Because almost everyone wants more, but very few are willing to confront the truth that wanting more means doing more. The people you call lucky, blessed, or privileged usually started where you are, sometimes worse. Two broke nobodies from nowhere can become giants if they decide to. While you could have been building your own story, you spent years drowning in distractions. You could already be wealthy or on your way. You could already be saving your mother from exhausting work. You could already be paying for better medical care, extending the precious years of life for the people you love. You could be providing, protecting, and uplifting your family. But even that wasn't enough to make you move. You traded progression for comfort, improvement for escapism, and potential for cheap dopamine. And the worst part is that many of you feel no shame about it. You sleep soundly each night, as if the weight of wasted time doesn't matter. You convince yourself everything is fine, even though you know deep down it isn't. Then you show up asking, can you motivate me? Where was that hunger 2 years ago when you still had time to compound your growth? Where was that urgency when you first heard someone tell you to wake up and build something? Why do some of you only change after life hits you so hard you can't ignore the consequences? You behave like the person speeding on ice after everyone warns him to slow down. You ignore the signs, ignore the danger, ignore intuition. Only after you crash into a tree and lose something precious do you say, I should have slowed down. You wait for the most painful version of the lesson. And here I am, using everything I can to try and push you towards something you should already want, to win. I'm not trying to convince you to lose. I'm not telling you to ruin your life. I'm trying to make you chase the life you secretly crave but are too lazy to commit to. Think about this truth honestly. If for the last 2 years you never skipped your training, never wasted nights scrolling, never drowned in meaningless content, never binged entertainment, never slept in for no reason, never broke your routine, who would you be right now? Picture that version of yourself, the body you would have, the confidence you'd carry, the place you'd be living in, the car you'd drive, the respect in your partner's eyes, the level of discipline, power, and presence you'd radiate. That person already exists in potential form. The only thing blocking him is your refusal to show up consistently. The universe is not cruel. It's actually far more generous than people think. It gives almost anything to the person who works relentlessly for it. I've never seen someone push every day with true intention and get nothing. The ones who stay stuck are the ones who never truly try or quit the moment discomfort appears. You're not too dumb or too broken. You're simply lazy, arrogant, or unwilling to sacrifice temporary comfort for long-term evolution. You must understand that discipline is the doorway to everything you want. If you cannot force yourself to do what you don't feel like doing, you will never reach anything extraordinary. If you can't make yourself train when you're tired, work when you'd rather relax, ignore distractions when temptation is high, or stay consistent when motivation dies, you will never tap into your real potential. Greatness is built on long stretches of doing what's hard, boring, painful, and unexciting while others chase comfort. Many people say, I'm not lazy. I work a 9 to 5 every day. Yet think about it. It actually takes more laziness to accept a life you hate and repeat it for 40 years than it does to sit down, use your mind, and create a different path. You're not lazy about moving. You're lazy about thinking. Too lazy to question the box you were handed. Too lazy to design a better system. Too lazy to escape the routine that drains you. That isn't hard work. It's automatic survival. And here's the truth most people cannot swallow. In the modern world, with internet access and a functioning mind, there are only 3 reasons you don't have the life you want. Either you genuinely can't follow simple instructions, which is a tiny minority, or you're lazy and quit as soon as things get uncomfortable, or you're arrogant and think you know better than people who clearly have results you don't. Arrogance is the biggest category. These are the people who ask successful people for advice and then argue with them. Someone shows you the blueprint, the exact steps, the patterns, and you respond with excuses about why your situation is special. Imagine telling Mozart how to write music when you've never composed a song. That's what most people do when they dismiss advice from people ahead of them. You don't have the results, the discipline, or the experience to debate. When someone has what you want, your first job is to listen. Now understand something deeper. Success is hard. Growth is hard. Change is hard. But being broke, stuck, and powerless is also hard. The difference is this. One type of hard leads to options, freedom, mobility, and respect. The other leads to limitations, regret, and a life controlled by circumstances. When you're stuck financially, you don't get to choose where you eat, where you go, or how you live. But when you endure the difficulties of building yourself, you earn those choices. Sometimes life makes things uncomfortable to push you into your real purpose. Struggles force you to develop gifts you didn't know you had, to rise into a version of yourself you've been avoiding. But you can't just pray for a miracle and do nothing. Belief without action produces nothing. If you want a different life, you have to want something enough to fight for it. And stop hiding behind the word luck. Calling successful people lucky is disrespectful to the years they spent grinding, sacrificing, and pushing through setbacks you never saw. You didn't call them lucky when they couldn't pay their bills. You didn't call them lucky when they were failing, broke, or working while everyone else was relaxing. Don't show up now and blame luck. Your life is shaped by your actions, not magic. When you truly accept that, everything changes. And finally, stop living in memories. Everyone knows people who peaked in high school, still telling stories from their teenage years while their present life crumbles. Every minute spent glorifying yesterday is stolen from building tomorrow. Your best story shouldn't be a memory. It should be a work in progress. Look at your life. Look at who you are. Look at who you could become in 2 years if you stopped lying to yourself and finally did the work. That future version of you is waiting. The only question is whether you will keep betraying him or finally rise into the man you're meant to be. Strategic thinking begins the moment you stop reacting to life and start predicting it. Most people move through the world like pedestrians crossing a highway, looking left and right with panic, taking each step based on whatever car is closest. They live at the mercy of events, surprises, and emergencies. They brag about working hard, yet all their energy is spent cleaning up problems they themselves created through blindness. They never see 5 moves ahead. They never anticipate the consequences of their choices. They never understand the long-term chain reaction created by every habit, conversation, association, and decision. A man without strategy isn't living, he's surviving, stumbling through situations designed by stronger minds, wealthier systems, and hungrier competitors. And when his life collapses, he'll blame fate, luck, or injustice, never realizing he was checkmated long before the final blow hit him. That's why the first rule of power is simple. Stop looking at where you are and start looking at where your choices inevitably lead. Many people say, I'm not lazy, I work a 9 to 5 every day. Yet think about it. It actually takes more laziness to accept the life you hate and repeat it for 40 years than it does to sit down, use your mind, and create a different path. You're not lazy about moving, you're lazy about thinking. Too lazy to question the box you were handed, too lazy to design a better system, too lazy to escape the routine that drains you. That isn't hard work, it's automatic survival. And here's the truth most people cannot swallow. In the modern world, with internet access and a functioning mind, there are only 3 reasons you don't have the life you want. Either you genuinely can't follow simple instructions, which is a tiny minority, or you're lazy and quit as soon as things get uncomfortable, or you're arrogant and think you know better than people who clearly have results you don't. Arrogance is the biggest category. These are the people who ask successful people for advice and then argue with them. Someone shows you the blueprint, the exact steps, the patterns, and you respond with excuses about why your situation is special. Imagine telling Mozart how to write music when you've never composed a song. That's what most people do when they dismiss advice from people ahead of them. You don't have the results, the discipline, or the experience to debate. When someone has what you want, your first job is to listen. Now understand something deeper. Success is hard. Growth is hard. Change is hard. But being broke, stuck, and powerless is also hard. The difference is this. One type of hard leads to options, freedom, mobility, and respect. The other leads to limitations, regret, and a life controlled by circumstances. When you're stuck financially, you don't get to choose where you eat, where you go, or how you live. But when you endure the difficulties of building yourself, you earn those choices. Sometimes life makes things uncomfortable to push you into your real purpose. Struggles force you to develop gifts you didn't know you had, to rise into a version of yourself you've been avoiding. But you can't just pray for a miracle and do nothing. Belief without action produces nothing. If you want a different life, you have to want something enough to fight for it. And stop hiding behind the word luck. Calling successful people lucky is disrespectful to the years they spent grinding, sacrificing, and pushing through setbacks you never saw. You didn't call them lucky when they couldn't pay their bills. You didn't call them lucky when they were failing, broke, or working while everyone else was relaxing. Don't show up now and blame luck. Your life is shaped by your actions, not magic. When you truly accept that, everything changes. And finally, stop living in memories. Everyone knows people who peaked in high school, still telling stories from their teenage years while their present life crumbles. Every minute spent glorifying yesterday is stolen from building tomorrow. Your best story shouldn't be a memory. It should be a work in progress. Look at your life. Look at who you are. Look at who you could become in 2 years if you stopped lying to yourself and finally did the work. That future version of you is waiting. The only question is whether you will keep betraying him or finally rise into the man you're meant to be. A strategic man doesn't look at a decision and ask, how do I feel about this today? He asks, what will this create in 5 years? Weak men only see the immediate reward, the immediate pleasure, the immediate safety. Strong men evaluate the path that unfolds behind every step. They know that each decision compounds. Relationships compound. Skills compound. Reputation compounds. Habits compound. Consequences compound. If you think short term, you live short term. You jump from job to job, opportunity to opportunity, problem to problem, thinking life is random, when in reality, you simply never learned how to play the long game. Strategy demands that you stop living like a gambler hoping the next dice roll will change everything. Strategic thinking is understanding that the board is always larger than it first appears, and that every piece on it has a hidden cost, a hidden benefit, and a hidden future. Look at people around you, friends, co-workers, strangers online. Notice how predictable they are. They act based on emotion, hunger, boredom, envy, impulse. They reveal their intentions constantly. They expose their weaknesses through their reactions. They fall into the same traps over and over again because they never analyze anything. They think life is about trying your best instead of outmaneuvering your competition. When you understand strategy deeply, you start seeing the invisible architecture behind every interaction. You can predict who will rise, who will fall, who will betray, who will stagnate, who will crumble under pressure. You begin to understand that the world isn't controlled by chance. It's controlled by people who can calmly observe, think ahead, hide their thoughts, and act with precision rather than emotion. Strategic thinking requires detaching from the noise most people drown in. You cannot see the battlefield if you're tangled in confusion, gossip, envy, and emotional impulses. You must elevate your perspective above distractions so you can see patterns others miss. Look at your environment like an engineer inspecting a structure. Who are the useful allies? Who are the threats? Who is pretending to be a friend? Who is sabotaging themselves? Who is gaining influence quietly? Who is broadcasting weakness without realizing it? Most people don't even know when they're being used, manipulated, isolated, or positioned as pawns. They don't understand power flows, incentives, hierarchies, information control, or psychological leverage. They walk through life thinking they're free while blindly following scripts written by stronger forces. Social media, workplaces, algorithms, culture, powerful individuals, and their own unhealthy impulses. To be strategic, you must understand that every human being wants something. No one is neutral, no one is purposeless. Every person you meet has motives, even if they themselves don't recognize them. Some want validation, some want security, some want attention, some want dominance, some want to feel important, some want to use you for access, status, energy, comfort, or companionship. A strategic mind doesn't judge these motives, it identifies them. When you understand what drives people, you gain the ability to predict them. When you can predict someone, you can influence them. And when you can influence people, you can architect outcomes instead of being shaped by them. The biggest mistake non-strategic men make is assuming other people think like them. They project their own values onto everyone else. They trust too fast. They reveal information too quickly. They assume loyalty where there is self-interest. They confuse politeness for respect, tolerance for friendship, or attention for admiration. They live under the illusion that people will treat them fairly as long as they mean well. This is why they get blindsided. They operate with sincerity in a world built on incentives. A strategic man interacts with people based on patterns, not hopes. He pays attention to what they do, not what they claim. He sees the motives beneath the mask, and he adjusts his moves accordingly. Strategic thinking isn't about being paranoid. It's about being aware. It's about refusing to be the last one to understand what's happening in your own life. It's about seeing early signs of decline, betrayal, opportunity, or power shifts before anyone else. Imagine two men entering the same situation. One reacts emotionally, gets flustered, and makes decisions based on what feels urgent. The other observes quietly, analyzes the incentives and personalities in the room, and waits to move at the right time. The difference between these two men isn't intelligence, it's strategy. One is prey, the other is a hunter who knows the terrain before he steps foot on it. Strategic thinking is not loud. It's quiet, subtle, and deliberate. It's the calm you feel when you know you're 10 steps ahead while everyone else rushes, panics, talks too much, and scrambles for quick wins. Strategy is patience in a world of impulsiveness. It's long-term positioning in a world of short-term desperation. It's understanding that the person who controls the pace controls the game. The person who controls information controls the narrative. The person who controls uncertainty controls fear. The person who controls outcomes controls respect. And once you start thinking strategically, your entire life shifts. Conversations become clearer. Conflicts become predictable. Opportunities become visible. You stop wasting time with people who drain you. You stop fighting battles that don't matter. You stop worrying about opinions that hold no power over your future. You begin playing a different game entirely. One where outcomes aren't surprises, they're inevitabilities, created by foresight, intention, and psychological depth. A strategic man understands that life is not a straight line. It's a battlefield of shifting landscapes, hidden traps, evolving opponents, and silent opportunities that vanish the moment you hesitate. Most people imagine success as a staircase. You climb one step at a time and eventually reach the top. But in reality, the world operates more like a chessboard, where each piece moves differently, each opponent thinks differently, and each position carries a unique advantage or danger. The worst thing a man can do is move in straight lines, predictable and obvious, acting like every situation demands the same approach. Strategy is fluidity, knowing when to advance, when to retreat, when to observe, when to disguise intention, and when to strike with precision. Those who lack strategy either rush recklessly into battles they should avoid or stand frozen in situations where decisive action would have secured victory. Every strategic thinker eventually learns the importance of asymmetric effort. In nature, the smallest creature can kill the largest one if it knows where to attack. The world is filled with powerful people who built their dominance, not by brute force, but by understanding leverage points others never noticed. A king doesn't control his kingdom by personally fighting every enemy. He controls the flow of information, alliances, resources, and influence. He uses the right tool at the right time, not the same tool every time. Weak men put in effort like a blunt hammer. They swing at everything. Strong men put in effort like a scalpel, focused, precise, impactful. The strategic mind asks, where can I apply the least force for the greatest effect? That question shapes empires. Many men sabotage their future because they mistake motion for progress. They chase every opportunity that crosses their path, believing that being busy equals being effective. But true strategy requires selectiveness. You must understand that some doors are not worth opening, some battles are not worth fighting, and some people are not worth convincing. A man without filters wastes his life pouring energy into meaningless pursuits. He tries to impress everyone, fix everything, and win every argument. He doesn't realize that spreading himself thin is the fastest way to ensure he never gains a position of strength. A strategic man chooses his battles deliberately. He understands that victory is not about winning many fights. It's about winning the ones that reshape the entire field. A key element of strategic thinking is studying the environment without revealing your intentions to it. Most people broadcast their plans before they've even taken the first step. They expose their ambitions to the wrong audience, show their insecurities to the wrong faces, and display their strategies to people who might use them as weapons. A strategic man treats information like ammunition, valuable, limited, and not for public display. He speaks less than he observes. He knows silence is not emptiness, it's camouflage. When no one knows what you're planning, they cannot interfere with it, undermine it, or prepare defenses against it. Unpredictability is one of the greatest weapons a man can possess in a world full of predictable minds. Strategic thinking also means understanding the emotional landscape of others. The strongest strategy in the world fails if deployed without psychological insight. People are not logical machines. They are driven by fear, pride, insecurity, admiration, envy, and desire. A man who understands human nature can influence outcomes without force, without conflict, and often without saying much at all. Watch how people respond to praise, criticism, pressure, silence, or uncertainty. Observe what triggers their reactions. Notice their emotional blind spots. These patterns are more revealing than their words. If you can predict how someone will react, you effectively control the tempo of the interaction. Strategic minds create situations where other people make decisions that benefit them without realizing it. That is real power. You must learn to see long-term consequences disguised as short-term comforts. Many opportunities arrive dressed as rewards, but function as traps. Many relationships appear supportive but are built on dependency. Many invitations seem flattering but are designed to extract your value. The strategic mind evaluates not just what something is, but what it will become. Ask yourself, if I accept this opportunity, what chain of events does it activate? If I align with this person, what future obligations does that create? If I take this risk, what cost does it demand later? Weak men make decisions based on the immediate emotional payoff. Strong men make decisions based on where the road leads. Notice that everyone around you is constantly giving away their weaknesses without realizing it. Some reveal impatience. Some reveal jealousy. Some reveal desperation for validation. Some reveal their fear of confrontation. Some reveal their hunger for approval. Most people believe they're guarding their vulnerabilities, but their behavior broadcasts them like a radio signal. A strategic mind collects this information quietly. You don't weaponize it immediately. You store it for the moment when positioning requires psychological advantage. People show you who they are long before they realize you've learned it. The man who remembers becomes the man who wins. Strategic thinking isn't just about understanding people and situations. It's also about understanding timing. Most men operate on a timeline dictated by panic. They rush into decisions because waiting feels uncomfortable. They feel pressured to respond immediately, act immediately, or prove themselves immediately. But strategy demands patience. Waiting is not inaction. Waiting is positioning. The man who masters timing can walk through battles others die in, because he enters only when the conditions favor him. Think of the difference between a hunter who fires at the first sound and one who waits until he identifies the target. One wastes bullets, the other never misses. Another pillar of strategic thinking is controlling your environment before it controls you. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or micromanaging everything. It means shaping your surroundings to support the outcomes you want. People often underestimate how much their environment dictates their behavior, choices, alliances, and even identity. A strategic man asks, does this environment sharpen me or dull me? Do the people in this circle increase my potential or drain it? Does this atmosphere feed my growth or my stagnation? He removes variables that dilute his focus and adds variables that multiply his power. He takes control of the arena instead of adapting to an arena designed by others. Strategy also requires understanding the value of indirect movement. When the direct path is blocked, amateurs push harder, stronger, louder. Strategists go around. They reframe the objective. They change the terrain. They shift the angle of attack. They understand that winning doesn't always require confrontation. Sometimes it requires redefinition. Sometimes the best way to beat a stronger opponent is to avoid becoming an opponent at all, and instead, position yourself where their strength becomes irrelevant. Indirect action is often the sharpest blade. Most men fail because they confuse boldness with recklessness. They think strategy means moving aggressively. In reality, strategy means moving purposefully. There are moments when boldness is essential. There are moments when subtlety is essential. There are moments when withdrawal is essential. There are moments when deception is essential. A strategic mind can shift personas the way a warrior shifts weapons, choosing the right tool for the right situation, not using the same identity everywhere. This adaptability is what makes a man unpredictable and therefore powerful. Finally, strategic thinking requires the courage to detach from approval. Most men remain pawns because they crave permission, validation, and reassurance. Strategy demands independence of mind. You must be willing to make moves others don't understand yet. You must act in ways that confuse onlookers because they can't see the bigger picture you're playing toward. You must be comfortable being doubted, misunderstood, criticized, or underestimated. In fact, underestimation is one of the greatest advantages a strategist can have. When people believe you're harmless, they expose their intentions freely. When people think you're average, they fail to guard themselves. When people think you're predictable, they reveal their strategies openly. The strategic man doesn't fight for recognition. He fights for position. A strategic man eventually realizes that power is rarely taken by force. It is taken by position. People imagine domination as loud confrontations, dramatic victories, or explosive displays of superiority. But real power is subtle. It grows quietly beneath the surface long before anyone notices it. It begins with understanding where influence originates. The world is structured around hidden hierarchies: the social hierarchy, the financial hierarchy, the competence hierarchy, the emotional hierarchy, the informational hierarchy. Most people operate only within the hierarchy they can see, unaware that the real game is happening in the layers they ignore. Success is not about fighting harder inside one hierarchy. It's about climbing into the ones that actually shape outcomes. That's why a man with strategy doesn't just focus on improving himself. He focuses on inserting himself into environments where his moves generate disproportionate impact. Influence is the currency of strategic men, and the first rule of influence is simple: never be desperate. Desperation signals weakness, and weakness invites exploitation. When people sense that you need something from them, validation, attention, approval, assistance, they instinctively position themselves above you. They negotiate harder, demand more, respect less, and take without giving. The strategic man never shows need. He understands that the person who appears to want nothing gains power over those who want everything. Absence becomes a tool. Distance becomes leverage. Indifference becomes a weapon. People chase what steps away from them. People value what isn't immediately available. Influence begins when you make others feel that your presence is a privilege. Yet influence is not built solely through distance. It's built through understanding human incentives. Every individual follows predictable patterns driven by invisible motivations. Some hunger for security. Some crave praise. Some seek leadership. Some need conflict. Some thrive on chaos. Some are guided by envy. Some are controlled by fear. Everyone has a lever, and a strategist identifies it by watching, not asking. Listen to how someone talks about others. Notice what triggers them. Watch what they avoid. Look at what they brag about. Each detail reveals something about the internal architecture of their psyche. When you know someone's internal architecture, you can move through their mind like a builder who knows where every support beam is located. You understand exactly which words strengthen them, weaken them, inspire them, confuse them, or push them off balance. Strategic minds don't manipulate impulsively or cruelly. They manipulate intentionally. They understand that influence isn't persuasion, it's configuration. You don't convince people. You arrange their environment, options, and emotions so that the decision you want becomes the most attractive one. This is why the strongest strategies never feel like strategies to the people experiencing them. They feel natural, obvious, self-chosen. A strategist can make someone believe that an action was their own idea, even when it was engineered. And because people defend their own choices with far more intensity than choices imposed on them, strategic influence often creates stronger loyalty than direct authority ever could. Strategic thinking also requires mastery over your reactions. Not control, mastery. The difference is subtle but immense. Control is forcing yourself not to react. Mastery is understanding so deeply that you have nothing left to react to. When someone insults you, provokes you, challenges you, or tries to undermine you, the strategic mind doesn't flare up emotionally. It analyzes. It measures. It studies the intentions behind the action. It evaluates the vulnerability the opponent just revealed. When someone tries to trigger you, they are showing you exactly where they believe your weakness lies. That information is invaluable. It exposes their perception of you, their understanding of your psychology, and their own insecurities. A non-strategic man sees an attack. A strategic man sees data.